The Fire on the 57 Bus in Oakland by Slater, published in the New York Times on January 29, 2015. It was close to 5 o'clock on the afternoon of November 4th, 2013, and Sasha Fleischman was riding the 57 bus home from school. An 18-year-old senior at a small private high school, Sasha wore a t-shirt, a black fleece jacket, a gray newsboy cap, and a gauzy white skirt. For much of the long bus ride through Oakland, California, Sasha, who identifies as agender, neither male nor female, had been reading a paperback copy of Anna Karenina. But eventually the teenager drifted into sleep, skirt draped over the edge of the bus seat. As Sasha slept, 3 teenage boys laughed and joked nearby. Then one surreptitiously flicked a lighter. The skirt went up in a ball of flame. Sasha leaped up, screaming, "I'm on fire!" 2 other passengers threw Sasha to the ground and extinguished the flames, but Sasha's legs were left charred and peeling. Taken by ambulance to a San Francisco burn unit, Sasha would spend the next 3.5 weeks undergoing multiple operations to treat the 2nd and 3rd degree burns that ran from thigh to calf. Richard Thomas, the 16-year-old boy who lit the skirt on fire, was arrested the following day. Citing the severity of the crime, the Alameda County District Attorney, Nancy O'Malley, charged Thomas as an adult, stripping him of the protections, including anonymity, customarily afforded to juveniles. Charged with 2 felonies, each with a hate crime clause that increased the time he would serve if convicted, Thomas faced the possibility of life imprisonment. Oakland is a city of more than 400,000 people, but it can often feel like a small town. The attack happened in my neighborhood, on a bus my own teenager sometimes takes home from school. Sasha Fleischman's family and my family have close friends in common. Richard Thomas once attended my son's high school. But even when events unfold practically on your doorstep, it isn't always easy to make sense of them. Crime was easy enough to understand. In 2013, Oakland had the nation's highest robbery rate. But this was something different. An act of savage brutality had taken place in a public setting in the middle of the afternoon. Oakland is one of America's most diverse cities. We pride ourselves on our tolerance. This is, after all, the Bay Area. Yet for all its laid-back inclusiveness, Oakland is also a city of grim contrasts. The wealthier Hills neighborhoods have good schools, low crime, and views of the bay. The historic buildings downtown are filling with tech startups, boutiques peddling handmade jeans, and night spots with 7-ingredient cocktails. But little of this good fortune has spilled over into East Oakland, where Richard lived, a region of grinding poverty and chronic violence. Richard and Sasha lived in the same city, but their paths might never have crossed if they didn't both ride the 57 bus. Sasha Fleischman's ride to and from school took an hour and involved 2 transfers, but Sasha used the time to nap or do homework. Maybeck High School, Sasha's school in Berkeley, caters to bright, quirky kids interested in taking, its website says, personal and intellectual risks. That description certainly applied to Sasha, a skinny, intensely analytical kid with wavy, chin-length brown hair, thick eyebrows, and a radiant smile, who started inventing languages at the age of 7 or 8. After reading a webcomic called Polly in Pictures, which explores polyamory, gender, sexuality, and orientation, Sasha, then a 16-year-old boy named Luke, began an epistemological investigation of gender identity, asking friends and family how they knew what their gender was. At first, I just assumed that I was this heterosexual man, because I didn't have any reason to assume otherwise, Sasha said one afternoon last year, sitting on the Fleischman's red sofa by a window festooned with the chain of paper cranes. But I started thinking, well, am I a guy? Most people told Sasha that they just knew what gender they were, but Sasha didn't feel that way. And so I started identifying as genderqueer, Sasha said. For me, at least, genderqueer includes an aspect of questioning, and that was a big part of it for me. the fact that I was questioning my gender meant that I was genderqueer. Sasha's parents, Carl Fleischman and Debbie Crandall, work in education, and their relationship with their only child has an affable ease. Carl, a college radio DJ turned public school kindergarten teacher, is the shyer of the two, with a dry wit and a quick grin. Debbie, a bookkeeper at a private school, is more emotional and effusive. But while they embrace Sasha's new name, chosen for its gender neutrality, and mostly remembered to use the preferred plural pronoun they to refer to their child, they still found Sasha's rejection of gender a bit perplexing. Telling Sasha's story also poses a linguistic challenge, because English doesn't offer a ready-made way to talk about people who identify as neither male nor female. Sasha prefers they, it, or the invented gender-neutral pronoun ze. The New York Times does not use these terms to refer to individuals. I'm trying to get my head around it, Debbie admitted, 2 years into the change. I understand coming out as gay or even trans, but this is harder for me to understand. I support them, she said, referring to her child, but I just don't understand what it means. Because genderqueer or agender people don't have a box to check on most questionnaires, there isn't much data about how many people identify this way or even what most of them mean by the term. The 2011 National Transgender Discrimination Survey found that 13% of transgender or gender nonconforming respondents identified as a gender not listed here. These respondents were more likely to be young and educated and to live in the coastal blue states than other transgender people. They were also more likely to have been harassed or assaulted. Since preschool, Sasha had attended small alternative schools, where challenging gender norms was unremarkable. In a Montessori middle school grade with only 25 students, 2 identified as transgender, including Sasha's best friend. Maybeck High School, with just more than 100 students, had 2 who were transgender and 2, including Sasha, who identified as agender. Outside school, Sasha dove into virtual and real-world communities devoted to constructing alternate realities, filled with people who created new languages known as conlangers, or who obsessed over the intricately plotted webcomic Homestruck, or who participated in live-action role-playing, a theatrical descendant of Dungeons & Dragons, in which costumed players acted out game scenarios in places like Tilden Park on the outskirts of Berkeley. In this world, quirkiness was not just accepted, but encouraged. All right, this photo shows Sasha Fleischman, credit given to Katie Grannon for the New York Times. Sasha started wearing a skirt in January 2013, accepting 3 hand-me-downs from a friend. Previously, Sasha's style tended towards steampunk, top hats, tweeds, vests, and bow ties, even a pocket watch. But Sasha loved the sartorial gender mashup that came from adding a skirt to the vest and bow tie. For Sasha's parents, the most surprising thing about the new look was how public it was. Shy and introverted, their child had always excelled at being invisible. Now, the teenager was not just visible, but conspicuous, a boy in a skirt. Instead of bashfulness, Sasha exhibited a newfound confidence. It feels like making this discovery and coming to terms with it has really helped Sasha become themselves, Carl mused, fiddling with the rainbow-colored friendship bracelet he wore. Sasha seems more comfortable in the world. Still, Debbie and Carl worried that publicly flouting gender norms could be dangerous, even in the liberal Bay Area. Carl was once beaten up while jogging in Berkeley by some men in a pickup truck who thought he was gay. Debbie was concerned that Sasha's skirt wearing might attract a similar response. I worry about how the world sees it and what the world can do, what crazy people can do, she said. For a long time, these fears seemed to be groundless. Sasha wore a skirt every day from January to November 2013 and experienced only one negative reaction when an older woman at a bus stop insisted, "You're not a girl." And so when Sasha drifted into sleep on the 57 bus on November 4th, it was an untroubled sleep. As the teenager would say later, I can sleep through anything on the bus. When Richard Thomas boarded the bus that day, he was a junior at Oakland High School, his third school in as many years. Located in the city's middle-class foothills, Ojai, as it's known locally, is the oldest of Oakland's high schools. Gertrude Stein attended it. While it draws Asian, Latino, and African American students from throughout the city, the school is spurned by the white families who live nearby. Its test scores aren't terrible, but it has a reputation as a rough place. Like Sasha, Richard had a long commute home from school, although his began close to where Sasha's ended. From Oakland High, he traveled to the part of town known as Deep East, where he lived with his mother, Jasmine Jackson, his mother's fiancé, his 4-year-old brother, and one of the 2 cousins his mother had raised ever since their mother, Jasmine's sister Savannah, was murdered in 2006. The house, a single-story white stucco bungalow, was clean and snug and sparsely furnished, decorated with framed photos of the family. A food service worker at a residential care facility, Jasmine sent Richard to Oakland High because she thought it offered a better academic and social environment than the high school in her own neighborhood. Like Debbie Crandall, she worried about what the world could do to her child. She had Richard when she was only 15, splitting up with his father, Richard Sr., shortly afterward. While she was proud of always having a job, she didn't earn much money. She wanted her son to attend college and have a career. These were big dreams in her part of town. An investigation by the San Francisco Chronicle found that some 600 black male students who start at Oakland high schools as freshmen each year, only about 300 end up graduating, and fewer than 100 graduate with the requirements needed to attend a California state college or university. The odds of landing in the back of a police cruiser, on the other hand, are much better. African American boys make up less than 30% of Oakland's underage population, but account for nearly 75% of all juvenile arrests. And each year, dozens of black men and boys are murdered within the city limits. From a young age, Richard lost family and friends to violence. In addition to his Aunt Savannah, killed in a spray of bullets while sitting in a car in San Francisco, his Aunt Tish was murdered by her boyfriend in 2008. 3 of his childhood friends were murdered as well, most recently his best friend, Tiranta Mickens. People used to say Richard and Tiranta were twins, because they were both handsome, light-skinned boys with a goofy sense of humor and a penchant for practical jokes. When Richard was 14, the 2 were sent to a group home in Redding after they were involved in a fight with some skateboarders. Because Richard was a juvenile, the details of the case are sealed. Tiranta was released before Richard, but only shortly after that, on January 7, 2013, he was shot multiple times while sitting in a car in an East Oakland parking lot. When Richard found out about his friend's death, he called his mother from the group home to ask if it was true. He just started crying and crying, Jasmine recalled. Instead of hanging up, Richard just put the phone down and walked away. Richard came back to Oakland that summer, heading into his junior year. He signed up for a summer job training program conducted by the Unity Council, an Oakland nonprofit, which led to an internship. His supervisors noted how much effort he put in, sometimes redoing the sloppy work of others. But when school started, Richard struggled. He fell behind academically and began cutting school. Early in September, Oakland High's attendance compliance officer, Caprice Wilson, found Richard outside school in the middle of the day, about to get on a bus with a girl who had just been suspended. When Wilson told him that she had to escort him back to class, Richard came along cheerfully, peppering her with questions. Wilson explained that she ran an intervention program for students who were chronically absent from school. "Can I be in your program?" Richard asked. Wilson was taken aback. Students didn't usually volunteer for her program. They were assigned to it. She wasn't exactly trying to fill slots either. She already had a caseload of some 800 chronically truant students, and her program was meant for freshmen and sophomores, who are easier to get back on track than juniors and seniors. But when she looked up Richard's file, she saw that his grades were poor and his attendance spotty. "I want you to help me like you help them," Wilson remembered him saying, "because I've been to a lot of schools and I've been in trouble, but I'm really not a bad kid." A petite woman who favored dangly earrings and liked to kick off her shoes while working, Wilson was a kind of surrogate mother to many of Oakland High School's troubled kids. Some of them even called her mom, bringing her their grades, photographs, and artwork to hang on her walls and writing her apologies when they ran into trouble. Her tiny office was papered with these missives. "Maria is your best daughter ever," read one. "I'm sorry, Mom, she made me hecka mad," read another. Written, Wilson told me, by a kid who had just been suspended. Richard adopted Wilson's office as a kind of safe zone, a place to hang out between classes. He would confide in her about his life. When other kids were there, he would often draw them out, listening to their problems. He liked to give and receive hugs, and was known for his silly, childlike sense of humor, his willingness to look foolish if it would get a laugh. He gave Wilson his mother's phone number, suggesting that they might talk. He wanted his mother to know that he was doing everything he could to get on the right path. "I'm going to graduate," he told Wilson, "and I'm going to make her happy." Yet Richard was apprehensive. He was having trouble understanding his schoolwork and wanted to be tested for learning disabilities. He was worried about graduating, and the violence around him was pressing in. That fall, another friend, this one from Oakland High, was shot. At the end of October, while walking to the store in an unfamiliar neighborhood with his cousin Gerald, Richard was robbed at gunpoint by two teenage boys who took his money, his phone, and his coat, and his shoes. In the moment, he told Wilson, he had only one thing on his mind: surviving. But later, he kept thinking about one of the robbers, whom Richard knew and had thought of as a friend. He felt betrayed. Richard skipped school for a few days after that. On the afternoon of November 4th, Richard's 18-year-old cousin, Lloyd Rhodes, showed up at Oakland High School and tried to persuade him to leave early. The campus security officer, Carlita Collins, wouldn't allow Lloyd on campus because he wasn't a student, so he hung around outside the gates until Richard got out of school. Before leaving for the bus stop, Richard gave Collins a hug. "I'm telling you," she said, "I didn't feel nothing but love when he hugged me." Every Alameda County Transit bus is equipped with cameras that continuously record sound and video from multiple vantage points. I first watched the video of the attack in the office of William Dubois, Richard's lawyer, on a laptop in a conference room. Before me was a grid of 12 views that could be watched simultaneously or one at a time. The video itself, grainy and impersonal, conveys the ordinariness of the afternoon. Passengers look at their phones or peer through the scratched windows at the darkening streets outside. On the video, Richard and Lloyd board the bus at the front. Richard, wearing an orange-brimmed New York Knicks hat, is quiet and smiling. The heavyset Lloyd is loud and rambunctious, bouncing, shouting, trying to get the attention of a girl at the front. After using his bus pass, Lloyd catches the sight of a tall boy in a white hoodie sitting near the back and heads his way. According to the statement Richard made to the police, it was this boy, whom Richard identified only as Jamal, who pointed out Sasha sleeping across the aisle from them, whispering, "Look at this dude." On the video, you can't hear what Jamal says as he passes the lighter to Richard. Richard later told his lawyer and his mother that the whole thing was meant to be a prank. He thought the fabric would smolder for a moment and Sasha would wake up and slap out the spark, startled but uninjured. The skirt didn't catch fire the first time Richard flicked the lighter, or the second, or the third. The video shows the boys laughing and joking between tries, horsing around, cuffing each other. Then Richard flicks the lighter a fourth time. This time, the skirt ignites. Lloyd calls to the driver to open the back door. Richard jumps off the bus. Lloyd looks back and then stops, transfixed, as Sasha's skirt erupts into a sheet of flame. The next few seconds are hard to watch. Sasha's voice is high and terrified. "I'm on fire! I'm on fire!" The flaming skirt looks unearthly, impossible. At first, Jamal howls with laughter. Then, as Sasha careers toward him, he cringes and climbs onto his seat. Everyone was running, laughing, screaming, yelling at the bus driver. "Stop the bus! Open the doors!" recalls Dan Gale, one of the two men who tackled Sasha and put out the fire. I was yelling, get down on the ground." I just dove. The bus stopped. Dazed and in shock, Sasha stood and pushed through the back doors onto the street. On the video, Gale says, "You need to call an ambulance, man," as Sasha paces outside, charred legs naked to the November chill, talking to Carl on a cell phone. Then the driver walks to the back of the bus and kicks the tattered remnant of Sasha's skirt through the door. "Real stupid," he bellows, cursing at the boys. We're going to stop reading right here, and then next week we'll read the second half of the text.